Did you know that Tucson, Arizona has the last remaining Titan II launch complex in America? That's right, and it's pretty frightening. This was the most powerful nuclear warhead ever deployed on a US missile. If launched, the fireball alone would stretch nearly 3 miles in diameter, creating a mushroom cloud 25 miles into the atmosphere, a tool capable of obliterating targets up to 1,000 miles away. And believe it or not, launch took less than 58 seconds. Unlike earlier generations of liquid fuel rockets that required up to 20 minutes to prepare before rising out of their silos, the Titan II was designed for a rapid, automated response. Inside, a 4-man crew lived underground and remained on standby 24/7. The silo itself descended 146 feet into the earth and could be described as an underground skyscraper, jam-packed with industrial machinery throughout the levels, as at the bottom sat a massive water basin. And here's the craziest part of all. During the Cold War, the United States had over 50 of these silos scattered throughout the country. So how did this top-secret weapon survive the Cold War into modern day? And what exactly has been left behind? Stay tuned to find out as we explore the story of Tucson's forgotten missile silo. I'm your host, Ryan Sokash, and you're watching It's History. For context, the stage of the Cold War and its eventual arm race was set in the immediate aftermath of World War II, as the temporary wartime alliance between the US and the USSR fractured over deep-seated ideological and geopolitical divisions. So, with traditional European powers left devastated, the US and USSR emerged as unrivaled superpowers with opposing visions. American capitalism and self-democratic determination versus Soviet communism and centralized control. The US, for its part, held a brief, precarious monopoly on ultimate military power after dropping the atomic bombs on Japan in 1945. But this leverage proved short-lived, driven by an intense lack of trust as Soviet leader Joseph Stalin installed satellite communist regimes across Eastern Europe. The USSR accelerated its own clandestine weapons program, successfully detonating its first atomic bomb in August of 1949. Shocked by how quickly the Soviets closed the gap, President Truman authorized a crash program to build the far more destructive hydrogen bomb. When the US tested its first H-bomb in 1952, followed by a Soviet test just 9 months later, the ideological standoff officially transformed into escalation as a high-stakes nuclear arms race gripped the world. This was a dangerous competition for technological supremacy that would soon demand hardened subterranean strongholds like the Titan II silo. Fueled by the terrifying doctrine of mutually assured destruction, also known as MAD, the resulting arms race sparked a multi-trillion-dollar military frenzy where both superpowers competed to build ever more exotic and destructive hardware. And it needs to be mentioned that beyond the giant subterranean strongholds like the Titan II silos, engineers also cooked up some bizarre tactical innovations. For example, the US fielded the Davy Crockett, a tripod-mounted rifle that launched a mini atomic warhead with a range so short that it risked irradiating the soldiers who fired it. They also developed something called Atomic Annie, which was a massive cannon capable of firing nuclear shells. And we shouldn't forget Project Pluto, a low-flying, nuclear-powered ramjet, with cruise missiles designated to zip across enemy territory at Mach 3, spewing lethal radioactive fallout in its wake. Meanwhile, and perhaps most bizarrely of all, was Britain's chicken-powered nuclear landmines, apparently used to warm internal components against freezing European soil. But the real concern was not Britain or the US, it was the Soviets, who built the 58-megaton Tsar bomb, a weapon so massive that its shockwave orbited the Earth 3 times. So from nuclear-armed depth charges and backpack-sized atomic demolition munitions to entire fleets of intercontinental bombers, this obsessive era transformed everyday technology into a feverish bid for total technological dominance. So, with that in mind, when it came to the MAD concept, missile silos were at the heart of the race. Hence, the U.S. ballistics missile silo program emerged in the late 1950s as a direct response to vulnerabilities in early nuclear delivery systems. And this program evolved into one of the largest underground civil engineering projects in American history. For context, early liquid-fueled ICBMs like the Atlas D were stored above ground or in horizontal containers called coffins, taking upwards of 20 minutes to fuel and expose on the surface pads where they were sitting ducks for an enemy strike, a state of affairs that just did not work. To guarantee the retaliatory nature of mutually assured destruction, the U.S. Air Force shifted to subterranean infrastructure, excavating over 1,000 heavy reinforced blast-resistant concrete silos scattered deep within the American heartland. This program progressed rapidly from the elevator-launched Atlas F and Titan I to Titan II. These were the first heavy ICBMs capable of firing directly out of its underground launch duct, and ultimately culminated in the mass deployment of solid-fueled Minuteman silos, which could be launched in seconds with minimal maintenance. By embedding hundreds of nuclear warheads in fortified, shock-mounted pockets across remote parts of the country, the silo program created a sprawling, hidden underground grid that served as the land-based leg of the U.S. nuclear triad throughout the entire Cold War. As for Titan II, between 1963 and 1987, 54 of these underground silos stood on 24-hour alert, clustered in areas across places like Kansas, Arkansas, and Arizona. Now armed with the most formidable warhead ever deployed on an American missile, these silos operated under the doctrine of peace through deterrence, a hidden grid waiting for an order that everyone hoped would never come. And fortunately, the order never came. So if we fast forward to the disarmament treaties in the 1980s, 53 of these sites were systematically decommissioned and destroyed. However, just 25 miles south of Tucson, Arizona, one complex, officially designated Air Force Facility Missile Site 8, was deliberately spared so that the world could still witness firsthand the chilling engineering and nuclear capability of the Cold War. And so, now that we know the history, it's time to have a look at what remains inside. From the surface, Air Force Facility Missile Site 8 appeared remarkably unassuming. A flat stretch of desert surrounded by chain link fencing, security sensors, and a modest access portal. The only hint of the massive power that was underground there was the 740-ton reinforced concrete steel closure door, sitting on heavy railway tracks flush with the earth. Below that door lay two distinct underground structures connected by long corridors. There was the 3-story launch control center and the 8-story missile silo, descending up to 146 feet into the ground. Personnel accessed those spaces by walking down a concrete stairwell from the surface before passing through an entrapment area guarded by twin 3-ton blast doors. The control center itself was a massive steel dome, completely isolated from its outer concrete vault. All of this was suspended on 8 massive steel springs to protect the equipment and crew from ground shock during a detonation. On level 1 were the basic domestic amenities for the 4-person crew during a 24-hour shift. This area housed 4 small bunks, a dining table, a kitchen area with a stove and refrigerator, and a single restroom. Indeed, it was modest, but it was designed to keep the crew completely safe and isolated after an attack. Level 2 was the operational brain of the complex. It featured the main launch console, radar monitors, target authorization equipment, and the locked emergency action message safe containing the launch keys. Communication racks lined the walls there, linking the facility directly to Strategic Air Command in Omaha, Nebraska. Level 3 contained air filtration units, water chillers, and power distribution system. Not to mention the emergency escape hatch, which was a vertical metal tube filled with loose sand. Levels 4, 5, and 6 were fuel ducts and retractable work platforms. These levels ringed the missile's 2 massive stage propellant tanks, which held thousands of gallons of toxic fuel. Each of these decks featured hydraulically operated steel work platforms that extended outward like giant ring collars, to touch the skin of the rocket so airmen could conduct maintenance. Though I should note that prior to a launch sequence, these massive steel platforms swung back flush against the concrete walls so that the rocket had a clear vertical path upward. Now, down on level 7 was the engine and umbilical arms where the rocket's twin bases were located. This deck was dominated by swinging mechanical booms loaded with cabling and fluid lines to supply electrical power, data, and temperature control to the rocket's propulsion system. Upon ignition, explosive bolts would sever these lines, allowing the arms to spring back into the silo walls seconds before the missile rose. Finally, all the way down on level 8, the absolute lowest point of the complex was the high-capacity water spraying system connected to its dedicated reservoir. Down here, within just 2 seconds of ignition command, giant nozzles would fill the bottom with over 100,000 gallons of water in order to absorb the raw acoustic shock waves generated by the engines. Importantly, it was this system that could prevent the intense sound energy coming from a blast-off from destroying the missile itself before it could even leave the pit. Today, Missile Site 8 survives as one of the only places on Earth where the public can see an intact underground launch complex. You see, to comply with Cold War disarmament treaties, the site was permanently defanged. A massive hole was cut into the nose cone to prove that the warhead was removed. As for the 740-ton concrete silo door, well, that was welded half open, so that foreign satellites could continuously inspect the site and prove that it was decommissioned. Furthermore, heavy steel pins were also welded into the shaft to physically prevent a launch. Below ground, however, the complex remains an extraordinary time capsule, complete with those original green screen radar monitors, rotary dial phones, crew uniforms, and the locked steel safe that once held the launch keys. In the end, the site was designated as a National Historic Landmark and will forever serve as a reminder of a time when the world wanted to blow itself up. We'll leave it there for today, but if you like Cold War secrets, our time together doesn't have to end here. In fact, you can keep watching, as I recently did an on-location special where I visited a secret underground command center similar to this site. However, it was on the other side of the Iron Curtain, where I live in Poland. You can click right here to watch that. Otherwise, as always, this is Ryan Sokash signing off.